Hello and welcome to this week's Testimony Tuesday. I'm your host, Charles Gates Jr. And this week on our program we have as a guest Jim Showstall. He is no stranger to Testimony Tuesday.
Yep.
This week he has a testimony to share about counting your blessings. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Charles Gates Jr., with our guest, Jim Showstall. This week, he has a testimony to share about counting your blessings.
Yep.
So, Jim, when did this testimony take place?
It was actually around Christmas time. I want to say it was probably 7 or 8 years ago
Okay.
when it was. I was still in the tail end of youth group, adolescent kind. Well, actually, no, I can't say that's a complete lie. I'm not telling anybody my age, but it was over 10 years at that point. So again, I'm still not telling anybody my age.
Not that much older.
No,
I'm 40.
age aside, but it was during my adolescent years, later teens, and I had decided on going to a missions trip to an inner city outreach, and it was about at that time, with it being winter, with it being colder, we were helping an outreach in the inner cities for homeless individuals that were there, and what we had done was a clothing drive. It was like a bunch of shoes and coats and everything, and just things to really bless the homeless community that's there in the inner city. Is the place is the program is actually called New York City Relief. It's based out of Elizabeth, New Jersey. And what they do is they go into like places like Harlem, New York, and the Bronx, and I believe the Bronx. They go into New York City, and they target areas that you see a lot of high homelessness counts, and just poverty counts there. So they go in there, they bring soup and everything, and it's just
That's
a real
awesome.
blessing to the
Yeah,
community.
yeah, they really need the help
Yeah.
when they're down on the luck.
And especially
They
it was
really
it
help.
was yeah it was so great to do it that time of year too, because it's also like you're spreading the message at the same
Showing
time.
the
You
love
don't
of
even have to,
Christ.
yeah, you don't have to say anything. You're living that, and people are seeing that, and they're being blessed through what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's one thing to say something and a totally different thing to live by what you say.
Absolutely. And what had transpired was when we were going there. Um, See, now at the time, like I said, I was later teens. I was a big fan of shoes. I loved shoes, and I don't think I was too appreciative of the fact of how many shoes I had, or aware of how many I actually had. All I saw was like I liked the way that a pair of shoes looked or they felt, and I got them. I didn't think about it. It was like an impulse buy, like when you're leaving a grocery store and you see that pack of gum or that energy drink. It's just like, no, I have to have it. It's right there. I have to take it. But through that, I know the Lord was teaching me a lesson through a lot of things there. Whether I wanted to realize it or not, I know I was being taught a lesson.
Yeah, most times we aren't aware of it.
Nope.
It usually catches up to us after the fact, like, oh my, that was the Lord.
Very, very much so. And what was going on was we were gathering uh, shoes and coats and warm clothing for this. And when we were doing that, in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I could really donate some of these shoes. And then in the front of my mind, I was like, man, I'm not donating any of these shoes because these are my shoes and these are in good condition and I love my shoes. And uh, that pettiness aside, that the way I can back on it now, and look at it, but all of that aside, I needed to be taught a lesson, and I needed to know what blessings I had right under my nose, and really count them and really treasure what I have and know that the Lord has me, and I don't need a whole bunch of shoes or anything for that matter. But that I don't need the distractions, but I need to be focusing on my walk and everything. So what was going on was we were gathering everything up, and we go to New York City Relief. We go there and we're preparing. We make a whole bunch of soup. Have to wear a hairnet. Let me tell you, I look great in a hairnet. No,
So
I
you
don't.
know it all.
No, with all of that, I look like a cauliflower. Like, it was just like it looked interesting.
Like a lunch lady.
Yeah, it was a lunch
Maybe
lady. I was definitely lunch lady. But we were doing all of this, and in preparation that they pray, we're praying beforehand, getting prepared, getting our hearts ready for everything. And I tell you what, it's a shock because where we're from here, if you don't know, is like this is the sticks. This is a valley in the woods in the Appalachian Mountains, and it's something that really takes you by surprise when you go to New York City. And not only you're not going into like Broadway or like downtown, but you're going to where the rubber meets the road, and like you're seeing the lives that are struggling from the fast-paced living, and the ones that can't keep up because it's so crazy.
Yeah, and oftentimes they feel left behind. They feel like they're forgotten.
Yeah,
And it's the moments, it's ministries like that, and a willing heart, a servant of Christ, to really make an impact and let somebody know through your actions that they are loved, that they are seen.
absolutely. And that's a huge part of the cry out of New York City Relief and their and the message that they're spreading there. Absolutely. But it was a big shock for me. And again, it goes back to realizing the blessings that I had, or not really realizing at the time the blessings that I had. And it really hits you. You go and they park like a food truck, and you're handing out soup. At that time, we were handing out clothing. We would be praying with those that were homeless or impoverished in that area, and we get to share the Lord's message with them, and just love on them, just listen to them. If they wanted to vent, we were there to listen, and if they needed help, if they were hooked on drugs or anything, there were programs that they all have lined up through that through New York City Relief. They all had things lined up that you could help them with, and it was such a shock in the best way for me. And to move it along a little bit, what was going on was all of these things were happening, and I was just getting blessed over and over, just seeing everything that was going on. At the same time, I was super nervous because I haven't done anything like this before. It was, but like I knew God was doing something, and it was really cool. At the end of it, we were packing up. A lot of the soup has been expended, has been handed out. A lot of people were prayed for and talked to, and there were all of the coats and the clothing were pretty much gone. There were a couple of pairs of shoes left, and there was this one fellow that had come up late. We got him a thing of soup, and and we were all rotating. You were handing out soup, you were walking around praying, and you were handing out, like there were different stations, handing out the clothing and praying with them. And at the end, I was handing out the clothing, and there wasn't much left. I had a pretty good at the end. I was okay. I was starting to relax and calm down and everything. And God had somebody come up to me and ask for a pair of shoes. And this is where God just shows his love in the most aggressive and loving way. It's so great. But I was doing this, and I gave him these shoes. Now these shoes, if I'm being honest, they were probably the nicest looking shoes that we had there, but they were beat up. I'm talking just rips and tears, scuffs everywhere. They were worn. They were beat up. And honestly, if I had them, I'd be looking to get rid of them. I wouldn't really hold too much pressure. I wouldn't keep them too much longer. But I gave him these shoes, and he's just overjoyed, not saying really anything. He's just in shock. He's like, I have shoes. It's really cool. That hit me. That was really cool. And then I got a chance to prayed with them, and just again loving on them, listening to them. They were venting and everything. So he got these things. He was walking away, had his soup, and we were about done. We were packed up, and we were about ready to take off. This guy comes back. He doesn't have these shoes on his feet. He has them in his hands, and he comes back and he's looking for me. And we're packing up. I'm like, hey, I remember you. And I go up to him and I start talking to him, and he's trying to give these shoes back to me, like just force them in my hand and give them back to me. He says, these shoes are too nice. They're too nice. They're in too good a condition. I don't deserve these. He's just going off and just run, like just telling me, he's like, I don't need these shoes. These shoes are too nice. And that's when it really hit me. I was just like, you know what? Here I am, just kind of like in my mind, I'm just like, man, they're really not that great looking. They're really beat up. But this guy sees these things like golden dipped, just the most pristine shoes ever. And that was when, like, I know, it was almost like I could just see God standing there like, yeah, what do you think? What are you going to do now? And again, like as a pride-filled teen, like I was just kind of like taken aback. I had no words. I was just like, listen, we can't take these back. These are yours. And I was giving them back. And at the time, I don't think it really hit me. And as we were going back and we were cleaning up, and it was hitting me more and more, it was like growing on me a little bit more. I didn't realize the magnitude of what the Lord was really telling me through all of this. It hit me, but it just didn't really hit me to the point where I was like, man, I really need to check myself and reevaluate things and count my blessings and really do this. And years later, and I had shared this testimony recently with the congregation here at Muir Forest Square and everything, and it was really something that years later, that I was like, man, God had me in that moment, and he knew I was struggling with different things. Now, it doesn't mean like everybody that likes shoes is struggling. You could like shoes, but it was something that was between me and God at that time, and it didn't need to be. Which is, you can't have that, no matter what it is. If it's football, if it's, just things that you're watching on TV, it could be something as serious as drugs and stuff like that. Nothing should come between you and your relationship with God. And I just took it very nonchalantly as like, it's not a thing, God. They're just shoes. They're not really, but financially I wasn't tithing. I wasn't doing the things I should have been doing. And am I being a little picky about it? Sure. But at the time, these were things that the Lord was opening my eyes up about and growing me in.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's where the saying comes in, that one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah.
That was always cliche to me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm older and I count my own blessings
Mm-hmm.
and been without, I really realize the depth, the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
That the things that we take for granted is something that someone else is praying for.
Mm-hmm.
It's something, the blessing that we may have, maybe the thing that somebody else is without, that they're really praying for God to meet. Yep. And it's moments like this that Jim experienced that really open our eyes to the truth and makes us realize what we have. And it's amazing seeing somebody so grateful for such a little thing that we take for granted.
Yeah. And in this season, right now, we're in kind of the season of Thanksgiving. It really is something that just really hits home for me in the best way every time this time of year. It's always something I know is just the story I love to share, the testimony I love to share the most this time of year.
It's understandable. Really kind of bridges the gap between thankfulness of Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yep.
And yeah, it's ironic how Christmas, the season of giving, follows the season of thankfulness.
Mm-hmm.
May we give because we're thankful, not only for what we have, but for what we have to give.
Amen.
So that's all for this week's Testimony Tuesday. I'm your host, Charles Gates Jr., with my guest, Jim Showstall. And we say, God bless you, be blessed, and stay blessed. In Jesus' name.